A number of years back, I was a youth director at Santa Maria del Mar, and I was commissioned by the pastor to belong to a ministry. It was Extraordinary Ministers of Holy Communion, with the specification to bring communion to the sick. And as you saw Karen Gilbert, she processed down the main aisle of our church presenting the oil of the sick. Karen heads up that very ministry here at the parish in a beautiful way. And as a solitary priest assigned here with some support from Father Leonard, Father Leo every now and then is a gift. But, to Karen and her crew really helped me out tremendously. And Father Tetlow at that time in the parish, he was all by himself, and it was a service to really support him in his challenges being that solitary priest. And I remember being so humbled to do so. And there was this one man that I used to visit quite a bit. Every single week I would go to visit him, bring him Holy Communion, and he was bedridden. And he was always in his bedroom, and the drapes were drawn and it was completely dark, and he was very depressive and was prone to kind of falling into these pockets, looking at his own mortality, really having a sickness that was very restrictive to him living his life. He couldn't really, move around that very well. He wasn't mobile at all. And I'll never forget this one particular day. I walked into the house and he met me at the door. And he had these very bright eyes that day. And he said, "Richard, I want you to come in and I want you to sit in the living room." So I went in to sit in the living room and I sat down. And he said, "I want you to remove your shoes and your socks." I did, and he went into the kitchen, took off his shirt, the towel around his neck, and he came out with a bucket of water, hot water, soap. And here's this man walking toward me, and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I knew what he was trying to do. And I said, "My brother, I'm here to serve you. Please, don't do this. Please, let me wash your feet." And he looked at me with welled up tears in his eyes, and he said, "Richard, God has asked me to do this for you. And I'm going to do it." And here's this man who could barely get out of bed most days, mustering up every ounce of strength in his body to kneel down and to take a hot washcloth and to sink my feet into that hot water. And this beautiful Christian music playing in the background, in this moment of immersive silence, my heart began to flood so deeply, like I've never experienced such love in that unique way, that this man would wash my feet, and I wept. And let me tell you, he washed my feet. I mean, he scrubbed and he scrubbed and he scrubbed. And I mean, he was going to town. I mean, better than any pedicure. And you guys who I'm washing feet today, you better not have gotten a pedicure. You did get, at least you're honest. Okay. The action of what Jesus does in the gospel passage today is so remarkable. He's master, he's teacher, but he willingly rends his garments humbly, and he washes the feet of his students. You know that saying? It's a very, very famous saying. Help me finish this saying. Do unto others. Your mother raised you so well. Do unto others As? You know, Jesus takes that to the next level, doesn't he? Would you be so willing to do unto others, to bow down, to take a form of a slave, to wash the feet of another? Would you be so willing to lay down your life as we prepare ourselves to celebrate the very paschal mystery of Christ, as we prepare for Good Friday? God gave up himself in the form of a slave, being born in our likeness. He was like us in all things but sin. And the great master and teacher, the very high priest, offered himself up as a living sacrifice, that self-denial. Would you be so willing to go to that extent of denying yourself for the sake of another and to die for someone? Jesus says in the gospel passage today very clearly, he calls us to his love. Love as I have loved you. Notice how he expressed in the washing of the feet at the end of the gospel passage. He expresses, do you realize what I have done for you? You call me teacher, you call me master, and rightly so, for indeed I am. If I, therefore, your master and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. I have given you a model to follow, so that as I have done for you, you should also do. He has left us a model. God has become man, and in his manifestation for 33 years, he has left us the very blueprint of how we ought to live our humanity. Do this as you ought to, right? That's the word, ought to. St. John Paul II, in his explanation of human freedom, expressed that freedom is not the ability to do whatever it is that we want to do, but it is in the freedom of doing what we ought to do. It is in the election of our will, choosing the good, choosing what is virtuous, what is right and just. It is in that election, it's in that choice that we enter into our humanity's greatest example of freedom. And only Christ can show that way, and that is a narrow way, because there are plenty of people who have betrayed me, who have turned their back on me, that I would not be so willing to wash their feet. Do you not think that Jesus had foreknowledge of the one who betrayed him? Do you not know that he had foreknowledge of Peter denying him? But he so willingly loved in that way. My brothers and sisters, I join you in being inspired by the person of Jesus Christ. I join you in looking to him above all else, because he calls out to each and every one of us and he says, come follow me. Will we have the courage to fulfill the model that he has left us? So, homework. These 3 days are precious before God's eyes. More than just a transaction and an exchange, we must receive and live. Tonight, before you go to bed, go into your homes with your children, with your spouse. Put on soft instrumental music. If you don't know an album to listen to, I'd recommend Gracie's album. Just a recommendation. And put it on softly and take off each other's shoes for one another. Get some hot water. And in silence, wash each other's feet. Renew your families tonight. Renew your marriages at the very basis of a love that would go so far as to be a slave. I'd like to share one last story with you. I'll keep it brief. There was a gentleman, very successful businessman, independent guy, built a pretty large trucking industry, and was ever on the road, and his wife joined him quite a bit. And he actually lives next to my grandparents' house. His wife contracted Alzheimer's. And as she progressively got worse, she didn't remember who he was, children, nothing. And he chose, at a pivotal moment in his career, he could have kept going, making money, put her into a home, support care, which a lot of us would choose to do that because we need a lot of help in those situations. But he made an even more courageous decision. He sacrificed his career at its very height. And he chose to be a slave to his wife, even though she didn't remember that she was married to him each and every day. He fed her. He bathed her. He took care of her hand and foot. And I just went down to visit him in Palm Coast. And I looked at him and I've seen how much the labors have weighed him down in body. He's choosing to sell everything and have a little trailer in front of the water where his wife loved. Simple life. And he's planning to be with her in front of that water until God takes her home. It is his exclusive choice. And I looked at him as he was sharing that, and I could not imagine a greater act of freedom in this life, where we would live out the very model exemplified for us from our Savior. May we be inspired in this service, and may we fulfill it today.